Welcome to the Entrepreneur Show. This is your host, Michael Mara. I'm the CEO and founder of Entre, a social network for entrepreneurs, investors, and freelancers. On this show, we interview the top CEOs, venture capitalists, angel investors, and founders. Connect with me and thousands of other like-minded people by signing up for free at joinentre.com or download our mobile app on iOS and Android. I am here with Alex. I'm super excited to talk about this. Alex, welcome to the show.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be great, and I think you bring a very unique perspective here because we haven't had too many solopreneurs or freelancers on, but it's an important part of the entrepreneur ecosystem. It's an important part of what we're doing and the people that we want to have in our network because, like we were talking about before I hit record here, we think entrepreneurship, and whether that's a startup or being a solopreneur or a freelancer, is on the rise, and we want to help empower people to start their own businesses and everything. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself and give a little backstory to how you got into all this stuff. I know you've done a lot now over the last few years, but what was it like at the beginning, and how did you get to really where you are right now?
Yeah, my arrival to entrepreneurialism was by mistake. So I never grew up thinking I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I actually thought I was going to go work in politics and run for office or something. I didn't ever think I would become a solopreneur and freelancer and digital nomad, all the different things I am today. So it was kind of born out of necessity because I quit a job that I had just accepted in New York City at the time that I hated so much. I couldn't stand another day of it. And I quit it. I didn't really have a plan. I was 22, so I was definitely not as equipped as I am now, 5-6 years later. But I was like, you know what? I think I know how to write, decently well. Why don't I just, I don't know, see if somebody will buy my writing or I really had no plan at all. So I always tell people that don't think that you need to have this roadmap all laid out or anything. I had no freelancing experience, none of it. And I went home that night and I got on Fiverr only because that was the one site my mom had told me about a year ago. She was like, oh, you should check out this site. I was like, okay, whatever, mom. And because people always ask me, why Fiverr? And I'm like, that's really the only reason. It's not because Upwork isn't good or something. It's just because that was it. So I went home, got on Fiverr, started offering different copywriting services that I still offer today, like writing blogs and that kind of thing. And the rest was history. I mean, it took a month or two for some momentum to build. I was not charging a lot, but I didn't care. As long as I was making my rent, I didn't have any other leftover money at all, but I was actually so happy being my own boss. I finally felt like my life's purpose was happening for me.
That's
I felt
amazing.
fulfilled finally.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I was talking to someone else about this. I was on another podcast, and the feeling that you get when you can make your own money is something, and that's why I encourage most people to at least try entrepreneurship, because it's the feeling of total freedom. So I'd love that. What was that like for you? Was it, I know you just mentioned it, but how empowering was that, or how just much of a relief was that when it first happened?
Yeah, I would say that's a really good word for it. It was a relief. It was when you try something that you never knew you needed, it just felt like a missing puzzle piece of my soul was put into place, kind of. Because I had at my previous jobs, I definitely had never felt satisfied. I don't work well if there's a ceiling. If I'm okay, well, this is all that I can make. My brain doesn't like that. I don't really do well with a boss. I get a little sassy and I talk back a little bit. And I don't mean to, it's just because I like to make the decisions and the calls. And I thought I was too young to ever be a boss. I thought I'd have to work my way up through a company or whatever. And then, I found myself all of a sudden the boss of my life. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. So I felt very relieved. I felt like I had stepped into myself finally. It was very exciting. I was like, oh, I have all this time to discover what I can do with this.
Yeah, that's such a great feeling. And you touched on a number of different things right there as far, because I felt very similar things. It's, when you have a boss, when you have ceilings and stuff, it limits your creativity, it limits your innovation. And at the end of the day, it limits your potential, right? And what you can do, because to do the things that you want to do, oftentimes it's very difficult to do that within the structure of a company. Some companies are different, especially in startups and tech. You have a lot more freedom and flexibility, and really you can grow very quickly too. So it's pretty interesting. But being a solopreneur, you have the ultimate freedom, but you also have you have to have accountability and willpower to do it day in and day out and produce quality work and find clients and all that. So I'd love to talk about that a little bit. And like, obviously you've utilized Fiverr. It's a great resource. You got on it early and rode the wave over the last, 5 years, 5, 6 years you've been on there,
Yeah.
killing it. So how did you first do it? I know you mentioned you priced your services a little low, you built up your reviews. Do you have any tips for people on, how to, whether it's Fiverr or Upwork, or I'm sure you've talked with a lot of other freelancers and you've gathered some good info for, how to help people get started with that. Do you have any advice for other, people who are trying to maybe do their own thing and find clients and, or, business online with some of these platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I always do say to people, like, if I were you, I would start out on one of these platforms because they basically act as like a marketing tank for you. They're going to just funnel you these messages, these inquiries. Because I always say to people, will say to me, like, well, how come you don't do it on your own? And I'm like, well, I don't go off on my own because right now, while we're recording this, about 10 people are writing to me on Fiverr, and I just couldn't go and get that on my own. So I always say to people, absolutely start with a platform. A lot of benefits come from that, like the Fiverr timeline. It categorizes all of my upcoming orders based on what time they're due. They all come with timers. So that's how I've been able to like manage the time on all of this, because it's right there for me. Like, this order's due in 18 hours, this order's due in 36 hours. All those like time management tools come with these platforms, which I think is super important for people starting out. Yeah, another like obvious hack is I did not charge a lot at all for like the first year, because I realized, these reviews are kind of like a currency of themselves. If you get more of them, if you get 500 5-star reviews, now if someone gives you a 1-star review tomorrow, that's not going to touch your average. You're kind of like untouchable, and then you can like really start to take off with it. So I always have people say like, well, what if that's not what my work is worth? And I don't know how to like tough love kind of tell them like, well, who says your work is worth more? I don't know how to like say that to people, but I was charging $5 for what I now charge for $100. Was my work worth more back then? Not really, because I hadn't really proven myself yet. So I feel like everyone, pay your dues with it, like everything, and it will pay off. I have people on TikTok every day write to me, like every day, that after a month they made $650 last month, they made $1,000 this month. It is still like absolutely possible for people, and they all just kind of follow the, don't charge so much in the beginning. And I also think that's not a bad thing, because there's less expectation on you while you're getting your footing down. So if you're charging $15, the buyer knows, okay, I'm only spending $15 on this. Like, I can't expect this person to, produce the world-class whatever. And I think it's important for people when they're starting out to like, not have that pressure on them, because now when you charge 100, people expect it to be so perfect. And if it's not, they throw a fit. So
Yeah, I think no, those are great points for sure. And I totally agree. I mean, the reviews right now, everything's going in this direction, but it's still so early on these platforms, right? Like, these platforms are going to be around for a while, and more people are getting into freelancing, and more people are getting into online businesses and need freelancers as well. So this is still, it's still prime time to get into all of this stuff. And I think it's super fascinating. Like, you mentioned TikTok, which I definitely want to dive into some of because you're big on social, and you've built up quite a following on there as well. So I'd love to learn how that's helped a little bit. We'll dive into that. I want to talk a little bit more about the writing though, because writing and copywriting, it's really important. And as I've learned, starting companies over the last 5, 6 years, it's like everything involves writing. And right now SEO is so competitive, blogging so competitive, Medium, like everyone's doing all sorts of content. Like the content game is crazy right now. So I'd love to get your thoughts. I mean, I don't know how much you've written. I'm sure it's like a ridiculous amount. You know what I mean? So with all the, blogs that you've written, do you have tips for people on that stuff? Like, what's the best way to go about? I mean, obviously different industries, different businesses are unique, but like, what have you learned over the last, 6 years doing all this, like, for your job and helping so many people do it? Like, what are the things that you're seeing now, like with blogging and copywriting, that people need to be doing so that they can really like take advantage of this over the coming years? Because it's only going to keep getting more and more competitive.
Yeah, I would always say, like, when people kind of ask me these types of questions, that I think what people don't realize is when it comes to copywriting, when it comes to writing a blog, writing an article, it's just as much writing as it is research, which is why people pay me a lot of money, because they don't want to do the research. So I say to people, if you're trying to make money as a blogger, if you're trying to put out a blog that's effective, if you're, all of that, it comes down to how much research do you want to put into it? Because a lot of people can string together a decent sentence that's not grammatically incorrect. I wouldn't sit here and say that I'm the most like eloquent, gifted writer of our generation. I think I'm just functional with it, and I put the time into the research. So I would say, like, for a 500-word blog, I always put in 3 reference articles. So I reference 3 different articles, stats, all that kind of stuff. And anytime you bring that in, it makes it more credible. The client will pay you more because it looks super impressive, and you see a little hyperlinked number. Even in theory, it only took me a minute, but it's like people hate researching. I know if anyone, when you had to write that research paper in high school or something, it was just like, no, everyone hated doing that because nobody wants to research, nobody wants to learn. So I would say to people, if you want to make money as a copywriter, you kind of have to fall in love with the process of learning all the time, because that's all I do all day is I learn these new topics for these people, and that's really what they're paying me for. So that's kind of like the secret behind it. It's not really the writing at all, whether you're putting on your own blogs or for someone else. It's more so like, how much research do you want to actually put into this? Because that's how much better your blog is going to be.
Yeah, that's super good advice. I love it. And it's so true, because no one, like you said, research, it's time consuming, right? And you want to make sure that you're getting good articles and then they're credible as well. So no, that's super, super, super interesting. Have you, diving now into social, how much has social media impacted you and your business, right? Like, being on Fiverr is one thing and having good reviews and stuff on there is great, but how much has, Instagram, TikTok, and your following that you've built on these other platforms, how much has that helped with your business and everything?
It's funny because that really hasn't had an impact on my Fiverr business specifically, because you're an anonymous provider on Fiverr. So there isn't really a connection between you and your personal life off of there. And all these years, like with the business I'm getting on Fiverr, they're just finding me on Fiverr. They actually have no idea that I'm like super into social media. But I've had my social media, pull through massively with all the other things that I do. And last month, I worked with a guy in Utah to make 2 online courses, like everyone does. And he put it out, he like created it and put it out. And then I promoted it through my social. And yesterday, for the first time, I like saw the results of that. And it was crazy. I was super happy with it. I think I had like 130 sales or something nuts. So I was like, wow, I'm finally monetizing my social. I find socials like really good for that stuff. I have an affiliate link to Fiverr. If people click on it, I make like 5 cents. I have an ebook I sell. I do sell like 2 of them through TikTok every day. So social is like amazing for residual income. Every day I make something from it, but it hasn't actually been like a super important part of my Fiverr profile, which I also tell people when they get all nervous, where they're like, well, I hate social media. I don't have the following that you have, all this stuff. And I'm like, you don't worry about that. That's not going to impact your ability to make money like as a professional on Fiverr, which I think is kind of a relief to some people. But I see social media as part of this whole game. I don't necessarily wake up and go, oh, I love Instagram. I really don't love Instagram at all, but I see that it's a super important part of business today. And that's why I take pictures for it.
For sure.
Yeah.
What's your favorite platform? I'm
Oh,
curious.
TikTok. TikTok, hands
TikTok? Yeah.
down. Yeah. I love how it's like the anti-Instagram. Like it's so not pretentious because I'm so sick of that on Instagram. Like, I'm so bored with it.
It is. I just think it's going to continue to get like that just because it's owned by Facebook.
Right.
It's just going to be like that. It's going to, it's the family kind of friends thing where everyone's trying to just, post like the nicest pictures that they have. And no, TikTok has been refreshing. I think it's super fascinating what's going on there. We're trying to get more and more active on there. Obviously, this is how we kind of got connected through
Yeah.
through the grapevines of TikTok, and it's really cool. And it seems like there's a certain atmosphere going on there that everyone's interested in talking to each other, connecting, doing things together. It's really, really fascinating. Do you have so how long have you been on TikTok, and what's your best videos, and do you have any tips for creating content on TikTok, or people growing their following on there? Because you have like 140,000 followers or something on
Yeah,
there,
it's
right?
great. I don't know what's happening. um, so I started taking it seriously in February of this year. So I've not been on it a long time at all. It kind of became my like quarantine obsession from March to June when I was like in my mom's basement because I fled New York City and the usual. So I was like bored and it became kind of my outlet for creative stuff. And it's been amazing. It's been literally how I've gotten like every cool thing that's happened to me this year, from podcasts to newspaper articles to everything has come through TikTok. So I cannot promote it enough to people. They're not paying me to say that. It's just like been amazing for me. It is cool because I'm part of their creators fund now. So I actually like make a little couple dollars per video, which is crazy as well, like awesome. But my most viral videos are always the ones where I just straight up show the money I'm making. And sometimes I'm like, oh, is that kind of tacky to just like zoom in on the dollar figures that I'm making? But that is what people want to see. So my videos that have gotten over 1 million views are always when I'm like, 10,000 away from making 1 million, or like I made, 36,000 last month. Here's proof of it. Like people love to see that proof of something crazy
Sure.
going on. But I've seen there's other people on there that are doing less like baller things, if you would say. Like this one girl just gives tips on how to make a better resume to like teenagers. That's all she does. And she has like 500,000 followers because her videos are so good and informative, and everyone needs to know that information. So I always find it's just like you like kind of just like niche yourself on there. So people only want to see freelance content, making money, being an entrepreneur from me. When I try and like put up vlogs and stuff, sometimes people are like, okay, stop. We only follow you for business. We don't want to see your life.
Yeah, it is tricky, and it seems like picking your lane and sticking to what you're following likes and similar stuff is super fascinating. But it's also tough because you have to catch people in like 5 seconds, right?
Yeah.
Or even a couple seconds. So it is really, really tricky. But so you brought up the how much you've been making. Congrats on hitting the $1 million on Fiverr. That's so cool.
Thank you.
And I don't know how many people have hit that on Fiverr. Like I don't know if they have a stat, but you have to be in the probably top 1%, even probably 0.1% of freelancers on there. So that's super, super cool.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's nuts. I would say I have seen there are a bunch of 7-figure earners on there who make over 1 million per year. So I don't think I'm in like the class of the top 10 Fiverr earners, but I'm probably up there in like the top 100 or something. But it's funny. Yeah, when that happened, I just kind of looked at the screen and I was like, wow, that was 6 years of never taking one day off and crying a few times now. I was like, that took everything.
Yeah. And, that's part of the entrepreneurial journey, right? Whether you're doing a startup or you're a freelancer or whatever, everyone has the ups and downs, right? And you have to, and that's kind of why our logo is like the way that it is. It's like, it's an N, but it's also, the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. That's what it, also represents. And it's like, it's so true. And that's why, for me and just giving people a community where they can ask questions and be around like-minded people going through similar stuff, it helps a lot, because there's a lot of downs. There's a lot of, crazy days, and you have to do stuff that you don't want to do, or you have to stay up late and you have to do stuff. I mean, we had our launch the last couple of days, and it's been crazy. Like I've been in the office for, 15, 18 hours every day.
Yeah.
So it's tricky. And, I'd love for you to maybe share, if you want, some, something that, happened, and, or, right, like, what do you do when you have, a bad day, or what do you do when maybe a certain time, or you're working with a client and it's, making you upset? Because, people are, dealing with this. I try to, like, if I as soon as I can, I just try to shift my feeling, right, to good instead of bad, right? Whether that's music, or going on a walk, or just getting out of the office for a bit, or calling someone. Do you have any, like, strategies for that? Or I'm curious what you do when, if you have any things that you do during, like, bad days or rough times as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, also congrats on the launch. That's awesome. Um, Yeah, I think that was one of the hardest parts when I was first starting at this, is like nobody prepares you for dealing with just absolutely effing crazy human beings that like all reason has evaporated from their head and you don't even know what you're supposed to do. If you previously worked at a job, right, like that fell on your manager, that fell on the boss, that was never on you. But it's like all of a sudden when you are your own boss, it is all on you to, yeah, manage your emotions with stuff, which I felt like I struggled with at first because I would take it personally. Writing is like a form of artistry. Like if you tell me my writing sucks, I just sit there. I'm like, thank you. That's so nice of you. I had one guy, so it's like the closest I came to quitting in the beginning. It was the first year, and it was like this psychopathic 55-year-old guy in Florida who like kept booking me, and it was all good. This is what was creepy about it. Like each order, oh, this is great, Alexandra, great, great, great. And then all of a sudden, like this one order came where like, I don't know if he didn't take his meds or like what happened, but he just sent back, you have no business being a freelancer. Who do you think you are? I knew you were way too young for me to book you, like really intense stuff that like hit me. I think even like got a job in there. Like, this is why I don't work with women, like just like all sorts of
Wow.
crazy stuff. And I considered this guy like, a cool like client of mine. So that like hurt me. And I remember kind of just sitting there going like, do I have what it takes for this? Like that just hurt me. Like what happens if someone does that again? And I've slowly since then, now I would just laugh, but I've slowly since then, like kind of engaged in like, I don't know what you call it, maybe like mindfulness exercises of separating my feelings and emotions from business. And now I see it for what it is, and it's okay. Like if someone says they don't like my writing, that's okay. Not everyone's going to. I've been able to like separate how I react to it. It's taken me years though. So if you're getting started and you're like, oh, I can't do that right away, don't worry. It will come in time. But no, yeah, I like if somebody's absolutely flipping me out before I write something sassy back to them, yeah, I get up and I leave my computer. I find like fitness, working out can be really helpful. I'll go eat when I don't probably need to eat, or I'll go drink some water, go for a walk. I love like photography's my like hobby that makes me happy, and I'll go take pictures of my cat or something. Like I definitely get up and walk away. I think that's a huge part of it. Just like take a breather, because you're gonna regret it if you write back to them and tell them to go die, because that really like that only screws you over in the end when you
Sure.
get yelled at. So
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. And yes, some people, I mean, look, there's there's all sorts of different types of people out there, right? But I think it's important to realize that those are their opinions, right? And
Right.
their opinions don't affect you, right? You have your own opinions about yourself. And at the end of the day, that really is all that matters, how you believe in yourself and what you think of yourself. And what your close, family and friends, think, and what they, I think that's important too. But yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. And it's one of the reasons why, I have, my other, I've had another business where, it was more client based and stuff like that. And I realized that I don't really like working with clients that much, right? Which is why I like more of a software company or an app or something where it's a little bit different than a client relationship and more like services, right? Services are tough, right? You can make a lot of money doing them, but they take up time, and you
Yeah.
have to deal with people,
Oh
and
yeah.
sometimes people are tricky. So it takes special individuals to, be in the services based business and work with clients. So it's at the end of the day, you have to figure out what's a good fit for you. And but if you start your business and you want to be, you think that you want to be a solopreneur, and then you start working with clients, and you're beating your head every day with going through clients, and you don't have any ones that, maybe it's time to switch the type of business that you have, and maybe try to create a product that you can just sell, or an info product or a course or something else like that. So I think it's super fascinating. I'm sure you probably have a lot more stories than that.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, no, it's very, very cool. And, yeah, I want to switch to another topic here about kind of what you're doing like now. You're doing so many other things. I'd love for you to talk about your app with EyePop, and what all that's about, because that seems super fascinating. It kind of seems like it combines your interest with photography and all this other stuff too. So I'd love to have you talk about that as well.
Yeah, iPop, it's still in the works kind of, because I've discovered that, making a mobile app and owning one and running one is like the hardest thing you could probably ever do. So I've been like, it's been 2 years in the making now. There is a Apple App Store version, but we're still struggling with the Google Play one. Yeah, so I have to work on my elevator pitch for it, but it's basically what I call a trending photo map app. I have to come up with a better way to say that, but um, it's an app that was mainly designed for influencers to just show them, like, if you're in a given city, this is the cafe that you can get this photo at, this is the hike that you can get that view from. And, starting with influencers, but it also actually is kind of morphed into like a travel planning app too, to help people if you're traveling somewhere and, it might be in a foreign country, you don't speak the language, whatever, you can just see, millennials, like, we care about what things look like. We do. Like, we care about that a little more than the service, and I'm guilty of it. So yeah, I've been happy with where it's at so far. We have pins in it for New York, although New York's like kind of tanking now, so might have to restructure the base city for it. But yeah, that's the app, and
It's super cool. Yeah. And it seems like it's just, yeah, I love like the map aspect of it. And building a mobile app is tough. Like that. I mean, that's what I've been going through for the last 2 years. So we just rolled out like, our we have an iOS, Android, and a web app. So
yeah,
all three of them
that's what
are,
we want to do. Yeah,
it's cross-platform, everything. And it's not easy, right? It requires a lot of time, expertise, money. You have to have the right people involved.
lots of
Um,
money. They don't tell you that. Lots of money goes into it.
Yeah, and it's tricky too, and it's not. You have, if you don't come from a technical background, it makes it probably 100 times harder as well, because it's a different language. Not only the code, but just talking about the code
Yeah, no,
and talking
absolutely. I mean,
about it.
communicating with my developer, sometimes it's like we're speaking Greek to each other. Like, I don't know what he's telling me, he doesn't know what I'm telling him, and we have to like be very patient with each other.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely tricky, but I'd love to. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to offline. We can chat about that. I'd love to help, and any suggestions or things that I can help you with, because I was just going through all of that too. We can definitely talk more
Yeah.
about it. But I'd love to kind of wrap up here, and share anything else that like you have going on right now that you want to talk about. Where can people follow you? What's the best place? I know we mentioned Instagram and TikTok and stuff. What, like, if you have like the best website for people to check out your writing, anything like that. And then I'd love for you too to share more about maybe some content that you're looking at, right? Do you have any people that you like to follow, or podcasts or TikTokers that you like to follow that are putting out great content for entrepreneurs, especially freelancing, because it is slightly different than like tech startups too. So do you have any people like that you're following right now, or podcasts, books, or anything good on like freelancing or being solopreneur?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually do not listen to podcasts because I do not learn from hearing. So I could listen to a whole podcast and have no idea what I just listened to. So I'm like I'd much rather read or watch a video or whatever. But okay, let me think. I like know people, but I can't think of their usernames off the top of my head. I can think of one girl. She's on Instagram and TikTok. Her username's Jara Bean, and she makes the most invaluable videos about social media marketing you'll ever watch in your entire life. They're so crazy. They're so good. I mean, I follow the obvious, like Gary V, boring. Everyone
Yeah.
knows that. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I mean, I would just say go to my TikTok and click on who I follow, because I only follow like 160 people, and all 160 of them are like people who are
Gotcha.
so inspiring. On there are other women, men, whatever, who are doing exactly what I'm doing. I just don't know their usernames off the top of my head, but
It's all good.
all right. So a few places to find me: TikTok. My username is Alex Fasulo Biz. The Z. I don't know if you're gonna be like pasting this maybe somewhere.
Yeah, we'll have some. Yeah, it'll be in the show
Okay. All
notes and
right.
everything. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, my TikTok is just like a treasure trove of information. I mean, if you spend 2 hours and go through every single video I've made, like there's everything you could ever need and more there. Like you won't even, I don't think, need to look at anything else after that. Like it is all there, all the information you need. The link in my bio goes to my online courses that I have. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I do post about freelancing there. That's a little more of just like my life and my photography and stuff. So that's Alexandra Fasulo. And then I have a website like everyone does, alexfasulo.com. I don't love how my website looks, so I'm kind of working on that, but what can you do?
Fantastic. Yeah, and I kind of feel you on the podcasting. Like I love listening to podcasts, but I also find it is hard to actually comprehend like and actually like take especially audiobooks too. It's like you almost have to like re-listen to them like 5 times to get the same if you would just read it. But reading is also very challenging to do while you're driving. So
Yeah, fair.
do you have I know you mentioned books, like like do you have any favorite books around this topic or entrepreneurship or even mindset stuff? I know it seems like you've gotten pretty big into mindfulness and some stuff like that too.
Yeah, I know. I always kind of hide the books that I read because they're like kind of crazy spiritual books. Like, um, I read the weirdest books. I was just reading the 48 Laws of Power, which is like a
Yep,
really intense
Robert
one,
Greene. Yeah.
And then I have like by my bed here, I have all these different like Christian books that I read. That's like I do the whole like God thing. That's what calms me down. So it's like, I don't know. I read like really funny books. I almost feel funny sharing them. I read like near death experience books. I find that stuff nuts.
Interesting.
I feel like anybody who is like really into freelancing and entrepreneur stuff like I am, they almost always are like also into spirituality and mindfulness.
For
I
sure.
feel like it always goes hand in hand. Like, oh, I've never met someone who's like, oh, I'm not that into that.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's one of those things because I feel like entrepreneurs are always trying to solve problems and figure out the truth in things. And
Right.
obviously, like, energy and spirituality is just like the ultimate kind of,
Yeah, like they go hand
you're,
in hand.
you're always like that, and it is really crazy. Like when you dive deep into it, I wasn't really planning on talking about this, but I think it's super fascinating. I've gotten super interested in all this stuff over the last few years and how energy and everything works, because at the highest level, if you break everything down, we're all made of, like we learned this in school, we're all made of atoms, and all of atoms are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons, and
Right.
they're all made of nothing but vibration. So if you understand that and you understand how those work together with everything else, it's very complex, but it's pretty crazy. And yeah, it's fascinating to think about, and I think that's what it is more than anything. It's just an interesting way of thinking about the world and how everything's kind of intertwined with it.
Oh yeah,
But
I could talk for like 14 hours on these topics. These are I always be like out to dinner and I'll be like, so let's talk about, like the meaning of life and stuff. And people always be like, Alex, can you chill?
see,
Chill.
I would be, yeah, we might have to have like another conversation or another round two that's like, on this topic, because I'm the same way, and it's, yeah, it's one of my favorite things to talk about.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, I'm sure we could have some interesting conversations around
Oh,
all of
yeah.
that. But Alex, thank you so much for being on the show. And this was just awesome. I know we're going to be doing a bunch of stuff together. We're going to have you speak at one of our upcoming events as well, which is going to be fantastic. And I feel like there's just so many things that we can collaborate on. So I'm super excited to, to see where the future holds for you and, ourselves, and, we'll see where everything goes. But this was great. And thank you so much for being a part of it.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure this is only the beginning. I can tell.
Yes, only the beginning for sure. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.